Today we'll be diving into the rhythmic world of Octavia, a frame that can easily AFK through Steel Path without needing a single Forma. We'll explore all her important details, from the best mallet spots to the most effective builds. And I'm excited to share that there's a build for everyone, as I'll be showcasing 3 setups. A build for beginners, a 0 Forma Steel Path build, and lastly a maxed out one. So stay tuned and I'll guide you through everything you need to know about Octavia, starting with her abilities. Octavia's passive allows us to customize the music she plays using the Mandachord. You can access the Mandachord by going to your arsenal and selecting the Mandachord at the bottom of your weapons. Your music choice does affect her other abilities, which I will explain in detail later on. However, if the music is annoying, you are able to set its volume to 0. The volume does not affect your damage, so feel free to do so if her music is not your thing. You can click on any of the rectangles to either add or remove notes from the song. You can also purchase different instrument sounds at the top. These all come with their own default song, which you can load up straight away. Octavia's first ability is Mallet. When activated, Octavia places a device named Mallet on the battlefield. This device inflicts constant damage to enemies within its radius while also attracting them to attack it. The damage output of Mallet increases in proportion to the amount of damage it took from enemies. Notably, the Mallet is immune to enemy damage and will not be destroyed, so there is no need to worry about its durability. Mallet is Octavia's main damage ability. It's important to note that only one mallet can be active at a time, and using the ability again will remove the previous one from play. Now, a lot of folks out there might tell you that the key to unleashing Octavia's maximum damage is to jam-pack every single note into her mallet. Well, buckle up, because I'm here to debunk that myth and show you why it's not as simple as it seems. The damage output of Octavia's mallet is influenced by the percussion section of the Mandachord. The strength and intervals of the damage are dictated by the number of percussive notes in play. The greater the quantity of notes, the quicker the mallet's attacks become. However, it's crucial to note that the overall damage output remains consistent since the damage is distributed across the notes. To illustrate this concept further, if only one note is placed, it will deliver 100% damage, but the time between each attack will be considerably longer. Conversely, if 4 notes are employed, each note contributes approximately 25% damage compared to the single note scenario. However, the mallet executes its attacks 4 times faster. As a result, the overall damage per second remains largely unchanged, providing the flexibility to enjoy your favorite songs while optimizing effectiveness. Here are 2 video clips that might shock you. In the first segment, I optimized the usage by incorporating all available notes on the Mandachord. Conversely, in the subsequent clip, I streamlined the approach by utilizing only 4 notes. It's noteworthy that both instances employ identical builds and confront the same set of enemies. The key differentiator is the quantity of percussion notes employed. Now, as we observe, the time to eliminate the enemies is roughly consistent in both scenarios. Therefore, it becomes evident that contrary to popular belief, you don't necessarily have to fill up every single percussion note for an effective outcome. Now let's move on to her second ability. Resonator is Octavia's second ability. It conjures a roller that attracts enemy attention, making it an effective crowd control tool, though not as effective when combined with Octavia's mallet. When used in conjunction with mallet, the sphere picks up the mallet and moves around, a concept that may seem promising in theory but proves less practical in reality. This synergy presents a challenge since mallet's damage amplifies with each enemy hit, and maximizing this effect requires enemies to strike the stationary mallet consistently. Pursuing and shooting a moving target becomes considerably more difficult. Remember that our objective is for enemies to spend more time in shooting the mallet, rather than chasing it around. After all, we can all relate to the difficulty of chasing a ball around.
Pace. Showing here, look at this. From Mbappe's hole back there. Hang on a minute, it's a...
If you're considering using a Helminth ability on Octavia, Resonator is typically the ability be replaced. Here's a clip of enemies shooting the mallet alone. Now here's another clip with Resonator. It's quite clear that Resonator is not the preferred choice if we want to kill enemies quicker. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's circle back to some of Octavia's useful abilities. Metronome is Octavia's third ability. Casting this gives Octavia a musical aura, which provides a slew of buffs for her. If you time certain actions to the beat, you will be granted certain buffs. The beat is visible by the rings below her feet. Most notably, crouching to the beat grants you invisibility. The more often the rings appear, the easier it is for us to gain these buffs. It's essential to note that her passive also plays a role in this ability. The more pink notes we have, the more often the rings will appear. Unlike Mallet, having a decent number of notes here improves the ease of acquiring buffs. I will list all her buffs on screen. However, there are only two buffs that I use often: the invisibility buff and the movement speed one. Invisibility is Octavia's main method of survival, while the movement speed buff is just a nice bonus for when you need to move around. A small reminder that in order to activate the buff, you might need to perform these timed actions more than once. Each synced action fills up a gauge. Once the gauge reaches 100%, you will then receive the buff for the set duration. Moving on to her final ability, Amp. Casting this ability summons a dance floor. This dance floor gives you and allies increased weapon damage while in its range. However, the best part is that it enhances your mallet. If your mallet is within range of her amp, its range and damage will be doubled. Talk about amping up damage. Now let's delve into Octavia's builds. But before you rush to copy it, there's something crucial you need to know. Having the best build won't cut it if you neglect this aspect. As Octavia, the key to swift kills lies in optimizing your mallet casts by strategically placing it in sweet spots. Random placements could lead to a depletion of life support, even with the most stellar build. This is why enemy radar mods are important. They allow you to track enemy movements and easily locate areas of highest density for mallet's maximum impact. Constructing Octavia's build is pretty straightforward, as long as you know what to build her for. Her top priority is ability duration, because the longer mallet remains active, the more damage it accumulates from enemy fire. Following that, prioritize ability range, and lastly, ability strength. And if possible, consider incorporating enemy radar into your build for better mallet placements. Moving on to her builds, we'll begin with the beginner's setup. This build excludes costly corrupted mods, often requiring a rank 10 upgrade, making it budget-friendly for newcomers. In the aura slot, we opt for enemy radar for the benefits discussed earlier. However, if unavailable, corrosive projection or any other aura mod can be substituted, regardless of polarity mismatch. In the absence of Nira's hatred, feel free to replace it with an alternative hatred mod or even streamline. For those who have progressed slightly further into the game, you can always substitute Intensify and Continuity for their upgraded versions. But for the more advanced players with corrupted mods, I recommend using the next build that I'm about to show. That being said, if you're on a budget, don't be afraid to take the budget build onto Steel Path. It works just fine, but kill times are a little slow, so you might have to activate life support capsules from time to time. This is the second build, recommended for those with corrupted mods. As shown on the left, this build significantly boosts essential stats compared to the previous one, though at the expense of our ability efficiency. It's advisable to pair this build with either Xeneric or Arcane Energize, as Octavia's abilities come with substantial casting costs in this build. The inclusion of Multificiency further enhances ability duration as long as shields are intact, a non-issue for a Warframe that can turn invisible. Lastly, for the maxed out build, I recommend using this build by Ninjase. The most important change is that it uses the Helminth ability, Pillage, to armor strip enemies. Removing armor is crucial if you want to do endurance runs or get a higher KPM. If you're unfamiliar with Ninjase, they make amazing builds and share short but detailed build videos on their YouTube channel. Their link is provided in the description below, so be sure to check them out. Now, let's delve into some lesser-known Octavia tips. A game changer is that her mallet can destroy nullifier bubbles, eliminating potential disruptions. Another consideration is the acolyte named Violence, who can disrupt your abilities with an aura. However, this only affects casting new abilities. Your invisibility buff, mallet, and amp all remain active. So when you see the flickering lights indicating that an acolyte is about to spawn, simply refresh your abilities and invisibility, and you won't have anything to worry about. The playstyle for all the builds mentioned in this video are pretty similar. Begin the mission by casting her third ability and crouch to the beat to gain invisibility. Then find a strategic spot to cast your first and fourth abilities. Remember to move away from your mallet to avoid getting caught in the crossfire. Once that's done, just relax until it's time to recast her abilities or collect resources. You can always crouch to the beat to refresh your invisibility if you're bored. Playing Octavia is akin to tending a campfire. You've got to keep throwing in logs to keep the fire going, but it's a relaxed and chill experience. I really hoped that this video helped you. It took lots of planning and more than a week's worth of video editing. I've also been sharing the latest Warframe updates on my community tab, so turn on notifications, and you won't ever miss out on these exciting new information. And if you crave a more active playstyle than Octavia's, then be sure to check out my Dagoth video on New King Steel Path with Zero Forma. Let's make the most of our Warframe arsenals without the Forma grind. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. ご視聴いただきありがとうございました。さようなら。